Hi, and welcome back to Psychology with Mr. Snyder. And today we're going to combine my two favorite things, history and psychology, and talk about the history of psychology. Here are your learning targets. We'll analyze some early views and beliefs about human behavior, and we'll identify the early pioneers of psychology and how they each viewed how psychology should be studied. There's different historical perspectives, we call them. So, in ancient Greece, the mind is not a new thing. Everybody's always wondered how the mind works. Socrates was the one who develops introspection, which means examining your own thoughts and feelings. It sounds pretty basic, but somebody had to think of it first, right? And then Aristotle in ancient Greece also outlined something called associationism, or basically that our past events and experiences make up our current mental activity. And so your past has an effect on you. Who knew, right? And a lot of this knowledge was lost in the Middle Ages because Europeans believed that psychological problems were caused by possession of demons and witchcraft, and we know that now not to be true. And they used certain tests to determine whether a person was possessed or not. And usually these tests resulted in the death of the person, whether or not they were possessed or not. Let's discuss some of the pioneers of psychology. And we can't discuss this and not talk about Vilhelm Wundt. Establishes his laboratory in Leipzig, Germany. And this is 1879, so psychology is not really that old of a profession. He develops the school of thought known as structuralism, and structuralism focuses on the basic elements of consciousness. And so we're trying to study what it means to be conscious, which even today a lot of psychologists don't understand. So Wundt develops and breaks down consciousness into two things: objective sensations and subjective feelings. The objective sensations are what you are feeling or thinking about when you look at something. Say you look at a rock or you hold a rock in your hand. What type of feelings are you getting? I mean, what type of sensations are you getting from the rock? Well, it's gray, it's smooth, or it's rough. Just depends, and those are all things that we can agree on, but you may also have subjective feelings about the rock. Maybe your spouse was killed in a rock slide, and now you are afraid of rocks, or you don't like rocks. That would be a subjective feeling about the rock. And so that is how structuralists believe the human mind functioned, by combining these objective sensations and subjective feelings. William James comes along and coins the term stream of consciousness. He says, one thing leads to the next, and that is how the mind works. He is the founder of functionalism, and functionalism, root word function, it's the study of how mental processes help organisms adapt or function in the real world. So with working, playing, how do you adapt, etc. This is all how we function in the real world. And that was William James' perspective. Sigmund Freud, you've probably heard of. He comes up with the school of thought known as psychoanalysis, and he thinks that psychoanalysis, the reason for our behavior is usually because of motives that we're not even aware of. They're unconscious. They're buried deep in our mind, and we can't access them. And also internal conflicts in human behavior between societal order and feelings that the humans want to do, these primal feelings and urges that we have, but we're not allowed to do because of social order. He develops the thinking for modern day psychodynamic thinking, which assumes that most of what's in a person's mind is unconscious and deals with these conflicting impulses, urges, and wishes. He thinks that the idea, or the key to satisfying these urges, is to do them, but in socially acceptable ways, and that will create a healthy human mind. And then finally, we have Watson and Skinner, who kind of go together. Watson says, we can't study the mind scientifically. We can't see it. We should focus on a person's behavior, which is why his school of thought is known as behaviorism. And that's the idea that psychology should be the scientific study of observable behavior. So he believes that people can be conditioned or trained by external events, and people are results of their experiences up to the point of present day. Individual choice is just an illusion. You have been conditioned to have every single preference that you have in your life. It's all a result of past experiences. B.F. Skinner adds in the concept of reinforcement and shows that animals that are reinforced for a certain action are likely to perform that action again. And he believes that people learn the same way that animals do. We're just animals, right? And then finally, we have Gestalt psychology. And it's an alternative to this behaviorism and structuralism, and it's based on the perceptions of objects that are more than the sum of their parts. So when we see an object, we don't break it down into what it is. We see its whole, and we give meaning to that whole. Like if you see the 13 red and white stripes and the blue box and the 50 white stars, you don't break it down into that. You see that as the American flag, and that has meaning to you. So Gestalt psychology rejects the structuralist idea that it can be broken down into individual parts or elements, and it also rejects the behaviorist idea that observable behavior is the only important part of psychology. And here are some Gestalt drawings. You can see that on the left, the circles in the middle, the darker blue circles, are the same. And on the right, the second figure in each line is the same. So everything around something also gives it meaning. All right, and here's just a review of Vilhelm Flint and William James. Go ahead and pause if you need to. And a review of Sigmund Freud, Watson, and Skinner. So that is our introduction to the history of psychology. If you have any questions, bring them back into class, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.